Hi and welcome. In this video we're going to be making a snow scene from a shot I took of Sheffield in the summer last year. Now we're going to be putting some ground snow on and we're going to be making a personalised snow brush for putting snow in the air. So, lots to do, why don't we get on with it? My name's Ken Fisher and this is LiveLink Training. Well, Christmas is just round the corner, so I thought we'd look at how we can add some realistic snow to an image to give it that festive feel. Now here we've got an image I took in Sheffield in the summer. Now it was a pretty dull days, so it does lend itself really to this project of having a winter feel. Now we're going to try and turn it into something like this. Well, we've got some snow lying on the ground and we've got some falling snow as well. Okay, so let's make a start. Here's the image that we start with, and as you can see it is pretty uninspiring. But even saying that, there are still some quite saturated colours in it. So my first step, I'd like to reduce the saturation to give it even more of a colder, like an austere feel to it. I'm going to do that with a vibrance adjustment layer. Now to keep things tidy, what I'm going to do is put this image and this adjustment layer into a group. I'll just click on it to activate the layer. Now to create a group and put any layer in the group, if I hold the Shift key down and then I go down and click on the new group icon, that'll do both things for me. It creates a group and it puts the image into the group. So if I click that little disclosure triangle, you can see it's now in the group. And I'll now rename that group, call it Skyline. Okay, let's go down and pick the adjustment layer, which we want to be the vibrance. And we're just going to use this just to take out some of that colour, just to knock it down a little bit to make it look a little bit cooler and a little bit colder. Okay, that'll do. So we'll look at making some actual snow. Now we're going to do this by making a selection using the colour range command. Now we're going to need a layer to put this on when we've finished, so let's do that now. So we'll just close up this group and we'll click on the new layer, and what we'll do, we'll call this ground snow. Okay, and let's put that in a group as well. Let's go for it. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down, click on the icon, and we'll call this ground snow. You have it. So now we've got two groups. We've got the skyline with the original image in, and now we've got an empty layer, which is where we're going to put our ground snow. But first we've got to select it. So we're going to go up to the select menu and we're going to select colour range. Now this is quite a large dialog, so I'll try and fit it on so you can see it. And what we're going to do, when you move the cursor into the image, you'll see that it changes to a little eyedropper. And what we're going to do is I'm going to click somewhere to try and make a selection. And what I want to do is to try and get it in the mid-tony area, all these greys here. So I'm going to click once and you'll see it keeps changing in here. And what I'm looking for is something where I've got quite a lot of white and a little bit of greys. If I click somewhere dark, that's too much. What I want is something in the mid-tone. Now I know we've got some dark areas in the sky, we can deal with them later. But I just want to click somewhere around there. Now you'll see we've got some white, but we've also got some greys. Now anything that's white is going to be fully selected. Anywhere that's black isn't selected. Anywhere that's grey is somewhere in between. And I'd like some grey because that will give me like a light dusting of snow. Now to get that, I'm going to use the fuzziness slider. I know it's an odd name, but it's a little bit like a range. It really adds in areas either side of where your main selection is. So if I move this, you'll see that I can go really white, or I can just leave it where there's some grey. And I'm looking in particular at this kind of area here. So if I move the fuzziness to somewhere there, that should give me some little grey areas as well, which will come out as white dusting of snow. When I've got that, I'm happy with that, I'll click OK. And you can see here we've got a nice selection. Now I'm going to click to activate my ground snow layer, because that's where I'm going to put it, because what I'm going to do now is fill this selection with white. So first thing I need to do is get white as my foreground colour. Now if we look over here at the moment in the colour picker, I've got grey and black, I haven't got white. So there's two keys that I'm going to use that are going to get me to white. First I'm going to press the D key, and that's going to reset to black and white. And then I'm going to press the X key, and that's going to toggle my black and white. So now I've got white as my foreground colour, which is what I want. And now I need to fill that selection from the foreground colour. And there's a really handy, useful shortcut, and that's hold the Alt key down and press the backspace key. So Alt and backspace, it's going to fill from foreground colour. And there you can see we've got this snow looking effect. I'm quite liking that. Okay, now I can deselect that selection with Control and D, because I don't need that anymore. And here I've now got my ground snow, and you can see in these areas they've even got, it looks like a little bit of a light dusting of snow. So I'm quite pleased with that, but my sky's blown out a little bit too much for what I want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down and I'm going to put a mask on this layer by clicking on the mask icon. And then I need to paint with black, because I need to hide some of this selection. So I'm going to press the X key again. You'll see that will swap black round to the foreground colour. I've got my paintbrush, and I've got a decent size brush. I've got 700 pixel. And so what I'm going to do now is basically just paint back in the original sky. And I'm going to do this quickly, so you would probably do it a little bit better than this. But we're just going to go around just to give that sky a little bit of character again. There we go. And if I go too far, I can press the X key again, and then just paint out any areas that I've overdone a little bit, like there and there. Okay, I'm happy with that. You can see that mask going on there. Okay, so now we've got two groups. We've got one with the ground snow and one which is the skyline, and here you can see that ground snow is basically just some white paint on a layer. Okay, I'm quite pleased with that as we're going along. So now let's look at stage 2, which is making the actual falling snow. So to add the falling snow, what I'm going to use is a brush, but not just any brush. It's going to be a brush that we've made. So let's do that now. So I'm going to create a new image. So I'm going to go to File and New. We'll have it around 1000 by 1000 pixels. Foreground content's white, and I'll click OK. Now that gives us like a square to work with. And on this now I'm going to draw some snow. Okay, so let's get the lasso tool, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start somewhere here, and I'll draw a piece, give it some rough edges, and I'll draw a piece of snow. And what I'm going to do now is fill that with black. So again, I want black as my foreground colour now. Well, it isn't at the moment, so I'm going to press the X key to bring it to the front. So now it's my foreground colour. And now I can use that keyboard shortcut again, Alt and Backspace, to fill it with black. And then I'm just going to keep going, making different size pieces of snow. So I'll do one up here, and again, Alt and Backspace to fill it. Do another one up here, a bit of a crazy one. And I'm just going to keep doing this with all different shapes and sizes. Okay, so now we've got quite a lot of pieces of snow, but they're a bit hard. The transitions are a bit hard, so I'm going to blur it a little bit. So I'm first going to add some Gaussian blur, and probably around 3.5 pixels, just to soften the edges, give it a little bit of a transition. And then it'd be nice if it had a little bit of a motion to it, if it looks as though it was moving. So we'll try a different blur this time. We'll try blur, but we'll try a motion blur. And again on this one I want it to look like it's moving, so we'll look maybe, yeah, something about maybe 50 pixels. Looks about right for that. Maybe a bit more. Let's try 70. Yeah, something like that. I'm going to click OK. So that's our brush. So we need to define it as a brush now. So I'm going to go to the edit menu and define brush preset. And we're going to call it snow. And then I'm going to click OK. Right, let's go back to our image. Here we are. And we'll go and select the brush. And we'll see the latest brush selected is the one that we've done, which is the snow. But I've got my little no entry sign because I haven't got a layer on which to put it. So let's create a layer. And we'll call this snow. And now you can see I've got the brush. But if I just click on that brush, you'll see it's coming out black. Well, I don't really want black snow. So what I need is white as my foreground colour. So we're going to swap them round again. So I'm going to press the X key. And now if I click, you'll see I'll get white snow. But if I keep clicking, I'm just going to get the same repeated pattern. So what we need to do is to change the dynamics of the brush. So I'll just get rid of that. And to do that, we need the brush panel. So I'm going to go to the window menu and select brush. And here it is. It's quite a big panel. But what we're going to try and do is change the dynamics of the brush. And you'll see what I mean. This is a little preview of what the brush does at the moment. And you saw that. So if I click and drag, it'll just lay dots down in this pattern. But I want to alter it a little bit. So we're going to try a little bit of shape dynamics. So we'll double click on that. And what we're going to try and do, and while I'm doing this, just keep an eye on this little preview area here. We'll increase the size jitter. And what this does, it basically makes it a little bit more random. So I'm going to put that right up to 100%. Let's have a little look at scattering. And again, I'll put the scatter up, and you can see how if I go right up, you can define really how these points relate to each other. So I'll stick it about there. That looks quite random. I'll put it on both axes as well. Probably take it up a bit more. Something like that. And then we'll have a look at transfer. Now transfer is how opaque everything is. Now I'll just drop that back down to 0 again, and you can see that in transfer, if we've got 0 on the jitter, then everything is the same opacity. But if I bring that up, you'll see some of the snowdrops are turning a little bit more opaque, and this will give the effect of distance, that some are close to the camera and some are further away from the camera. Okay, I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do is save that out as a new brush preset, and we'll call it Snow 1. Okay, I'll just close that down because I don't need it anymore. And here we go. So we're going to start off by putting some snow. Let's make it look as though it's in the distance. So we're going to make it small. So we want a very small brush. So I would say something like, let's go down to, I don't know, maybe 100 pixels. Well, we'll just try it and see what it looks like. Yeah, that's not bad. Maybe we do need to be up at about 100. And what we're going to do is then just click and spray the snow around in the distance. Make it quite random. And spray it around, and we're still going to get some in the foreground as well, but the majority in the background. I want this to try and convey a little bit of distance to the image as well. Okay, I think that's all right. We can drop the opacity a little bit if it's a little bit too much, and I think it needs a little bit more of a blur, so I'm going to go up to the filter menu again. We're going to go to blur and give it a little bit more of a motion blur. That's probably too much. I just want to give it a little bit of movement, and that's all. Okay, and I'll click OK. Okay, I'm now going to try and build this up in layers, so I'll have another layer and I'll call this Snow 2. But this time I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, so I can use the square brackets. I'll put it up to about 500. Let's have a quick click and see how that looks. That's a bit better, that's alright. So I want some slightly bigger drops, and I'm just going to click to get a bit of a random pattern. I'm going to bring that into the foreground a little bit. And again, I can drop the opacity if it's too much. And then I'll give this a little bit of blur as well, bit of movement. So we'll go to filter and blur and motion blur, and let's see, that too much. Yeah, we'll leave it about there. And then I think I'd like some snow really close, so I'm going to have another layer and call this Snow 3. But this time I'll make the brush even bigger, and I'll just click a few times just to get a couple of nice big snowdrops in the foreground. Oh yes, that's better. That's looking like a little bit of a blizzard going off, and I'll drop the opacity again a little bit, and there we go. And I think just to tidy things up, I'll drop these three. I'm going to shift click at the end so I can select all these three. Then I'm going to hold the shift key down and click on the new group icon to put them into a group, and I'll call that the snow. So now we've got three groups. We've got our airborne snow, we've got our ground snow, and we've got our skyline. And that's us finished. Our work here is done. Now this technique is often used, but quite often it's just used on one layer, and I think the realism of this is added to by having it on the snow on separate layers, different size snow, different blurs, and I think it works a lot better. There we are, how to add fairly realistic snow to an image using a custom brush that you've made yourself. Well, Photoshoppers, that's all for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment under the video for me. And if you get a minute, please just wait a second till the video finishes and click on that subscribe button for me. That will be fantastic and help me to build up my Photoshop learning community. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.